Be careful.
He's and Scott Higgins, both of them coked up out of their minds.
Listen to you. He's down in the basement. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I think we should call this the Acement.
The Acement, yes.
Yeah, what do you think there, huh?
I like that. The Acement Studios.
Excuse me, I'm drinking beer. Hold on a second.
We usually drink bourbon on our end
Yeah,
when we
right.
do the podcast, so
That's all right.
feel free to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot an 8-ball if you want. We don't care. As long as it's good stories.
Hey, welcome to the Acement, everybody. It's time to go behind the funny. This is Scott Higgins.
And this is Ace Aceto.
Wow, don't sound so excited about
Well,
it.
you're like, hey.
That's right. Welcome to the Morning
Johnny
Zoo.
Fever.
Dr. Johnny Fever. I'm Dr. Johnny Fever. This is Venus Flytrap. Hey, bud.
Okay, hey, bud.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm always great.
Hey,
Cheers.
we'll do cheers before we do the bourbon date of the week.
Yeah, sure. Cheers.
Nectar of the gods.
Yes.
Yes, this week our bourbon date is our old friend who never lets us down, Jefferson's Bourbon. They make pretty much every bourbon they make is very good.
Yes.
This is a very fancy one that my friend over here got, the Jefferson's Reserve Twin Oak Custom Barrel. That we have been enjoying since Christmas, only break out once in a while, and we broke it out
It's
tonight.
a special occasion.
And it is absolutely delicious. So if you guys haven't tried the Jefferson's Bourbon, we've promoted them in the past. Even their just regular small batch is a really good tasting bourbon. The Reserve is really good. I had some Ocean this past weekend, hanging out with some friends. Ocean's a great one. They have many different ones that are very good. So if you have a chance, check them out. They're excellent. And we say that unsolicited, by the way.
That's right.
No kickbacks.
No. As
nothing.
much as we'd like them. We tried for a good 2 years.
Let me tell you, we've always said that we'll only promote products that we use and like.
Yes.
And we use and like them. And it's like the hot girl in school that won't even look at us.
Hey, yeah. She looked at us.
She said hello to us in the hallway.
She talked to us in our locker.
She said hello to us in the hallway and asked us how our day was at our locker. And then somebody told her something in a class one day.
Yeah, they must have told her we have BO or something like that.
We have cooties because
Yeah.
she has not talked to us since.
No.
But
We
that's
love
okay.
her. We still love her.
We
though.
love her.
That's all right. Yeah. So
Anyway, we're just gonna still enjoy it. I mean, I'm not gonna instantly say that she has some kind of rare incommunicable disease or something like that just because she won't talk to us. It's still a delicious bourbon, so you should try it out. If you guys follow us on Facebook, Ace, pretty much started an argument with the best Dorito flavor ever.
No, I said this is the best Dorito
Right.
flavor. No arguments. 2 Gen Xers.
No, it's not the best Dorito
Yes, it
flavor
is,
ever.
dude.
It's. I'm sorry. It's not.
You Connecticut people are fucked up. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe it's because someone dared me to eat 2 bags and wash it down with Mountain Dew, and I got sick. And
There's your problem. But that's like when you get drunk for the first time on Peachtree Schnapps or something like that, and then
No.
you say, "No, I can never drink that again."
the schnapps that did me in when I was in high school. Okay, true story time. Confession
Okay,
time, people.
Kids gather around the fire. Scotty's got a story.
Back in our day, when we were growing up in high school, kids tend to drink a little bit. That was a very popular thing
As
to do.
opposed to what they do now.
I'm not saying either way. I'm just talking about our time.
Yeah.
But they don't do keg parties in the woods like we used to do with fires and stuff like that. That's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Not really.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. No. I guess
Not-
you're right.
the-
We used to go to like a construction company, gravel pit.
Yes,
and start a
exactly.
bonfire in the middle of it.
Where I lived, there was two spots that there was one called the river. You'd go behind this plant, this plastics plant, and then there was a trail, and down by the river, someone would set up a bonfire, and we'd have a keg. So keggers, they were big in the 80s.
Yeah.
And
The 90s. My ex-wife grew up in Pittsfield. They used to go to the top of
because there's
October
nothing
Mountain.
to fucking do in Pittsfield.
This is true.
So
I
they
think
fucking drink.
She married me just to get the fuck out.
Yes, exactly. You had a car. Get me the fuck out. But anyway, we decided, a bunch of us decided one Friday night to go to the high school basketball game, all dressed up like we were military to harass the visiting team, and we got a bunch of bottles of root beer schnapps.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Now, root beer schnapps is not that strong, but it is when you're 16 and 17.
Oh, yeah.
And you're drinking liter bottles by yourself.
Yep.
Well,
Any schnapps is like that.
old Scotty drank about at least 1 liter by himself, if not more. And it hit about halfway through the game.
Oh my god.
And I realized I was going to
gonna
throw
say,
up.
how bad were you throwing up?
I was going to throw up. So I had to run out of the gym. I had to run outside. As I'm running, instead of just pushing the push bar on the door to get outside like a normal person, I go to kick it open like I'm fucking Daniel-san, and my foot goes through the window of the door. And it's the glass with the
wiring
with the
in
wiring in it.
between?
I went right through it because I
my
was running
God.
full speed because I thought I was going to throw up. And instead, I just took off like a bat out of hell.
Didn't even care.
I'm running across the front yard of the school, not thinking everybody's watching me,
Yeah.
throwing up to my side as I'm running, jump in my car, and take off. When I go to pull out of the school lot, I can go right away from the school. No, I turn left and drive across the whole front of the school
While everyone's still watching.
while
you.
everyone is still watching me.
Oh my god.
I ended up paying for that window, by
I
the
was
way.
going to say, yeah.
There was
no
happening.
getting away, especially since you took the wrong way out.
And I still have not had root beer schnapps to this day.
Yeah, yeah. My buddy Rich, who we had on
Yes,
the podcast
yes,
a couple of years ago,
yep.
same thing. It was Peachtree Schnapps. That's why I brought it up. Throwing up, I'll never drink again. He told me a couple of weeks, maybe about a year ago, he was like, I just now have been able to drink Peachtree Schnapps. Like now, and he's like late 50s.
Well, tequila, I got really sick on tequila at my bachelor party, but then a couple years later, I had good tequila in Mexico,
it's different.
and
It's not that Jose. What was the old kind that we used to get?
all I
that had
remember
the worm at the bottom
yes,
of it. Yeah.
exactly. It had a white label that just said tequila.
Yeah.
It was cheap shit. But anyway,
Well, listen, we have stalled enough.
we
We've
just
done
wanted
it.
to reminisce a little bit because that's what we do, and we have an amazing guest for you guys tonight. Ace knew him.
I got to work with him years ago at the Comedy Connection a bunch of times back in the early 2000s. And then you recently got to work with him too.
Yeah, Daryl's house back in March, and
Yeah.
and it's one of those nights every once in a while where we worked with Kerry Louise, him and I, and all of us just got along really well, sharing some
Yeah.
great stories, and just had a blast that
Sounds
night.
like so much fun. I wish Rick Adana would get back to me.
I talked to Rick Adana today, as a matter of fact, and yeah,
You
he's
sure you didn't mention it at
he's
all?
not going to book you anytime soon. Not after the conversation we had today. No.
Really? What'd you tell him?
I told him, yeah, Ace wouldn't do well there. You don't want to book
Oh,
anything.
you
no, I didn't
asshole.
do that.
Wow. Okay,
No, I
this
di-
is the last Behind the Funny podcast, folks.
No,
'cause-
I told him to book you
Yeah.
and I together so we can go out
Oh,
together.
yeah, that'd be fun. All right, well, listen, this guy, again, guy I worked with back in the early 2000s. Scott just worked with him. Very, very funny New York comic. Please welcome Mr. Frank Vignola.
Hey,
Here he
Frank.
is.
Hey.
So, are you waiting for a phone call from Rick Adana? Because that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
that.
If you
Actually, I'm just waiting for him to read my message.
if you have to follow up with him, you're correct.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Well,
Scott,
he's on the
this might-
road, right? He's on the road a lot.
This might sound familiar, Scott. You'll finally get through to him on a text, right? And he'll be like, "Hey, buddy, I was just thinking about you."
That was today. That
it?
was
Yeah.
exactly what happened today.
Oh, I'm going to text him right now while we're on the show.
That is so
And
funny
I
that
want
you
to
said
see
that.
if that's his
yeah.
response.
I literally could, if I could blow this up big enough, you could read
Right.
it, and that's almost word for word.
Yeah, I was just thinking about you. Yeah, yeah.
That's
You were
perfect.
doing that. I heard that because when I was in the waiting room listening. I heard that. I heard the drinking stories, which, quite frankly, found a little offensive. I've been sober for 24 years now.
Have you really?
I saw you
Yeah.
post that. Congratulations, my friend.
Congratulations.
Good for
My-
you.
Yeah, man. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I have not had a drink this century.
Wow.
We've
actually.
1999 was my last drink.
Did you do it like on New Year's Eve and say that was it?
Oh, do you really want to hear the story of that? Is that where you want to
Yeah,
start?
sure.
Hey,
You wanna-
wherever you want.
Li-
Hey,
listen,
By,
we've
by
had-
the way, here's cheers to 24 years.
We've had
Right.
plenty of.
I got
A Red Bull.
I got this. I got
Listen, we've had plenty of sober folks on.
Yes.
and
We've promoted some.
and shamelessly drank in front of them. So I
Right.
apologize. We've had guys in the studio we're drinking in front of.
Yeah.
One
Oh,
guy
man.
a couple of weeks ago fell off the wagon and said, "I guess I'll fall off the wagon with this bourbon."
yeah, we didn't even know he was
And
on.
we didn't know he was on the wagon. I'm like, no, don't do it for us.
Yeah, there's better reasons
We're
than us.
degenerates, not you.
No. So it's weird because you know that thing where they say, like things often go out with a whimper, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, oh my God. So I had been trying for years to get sober, like for years. Like I had almost 10 years in and out of AA, starting in 1990.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. Been to rehab, done the whole 9 yards. I was the kind of guy that would get it for a little while and then relapse, go mess around,
Yeah.
whatever. Had all those tricks like I'm sober in New York. I only drink on the road, crap
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right. But I remember my last this is so funny. My last drink, I had a couple of vodka and cranberries. I was doing somebody's holiday party on December 11th in Hartford, Connecticut.
Really?
1999. I was getting paid $500 for the party, which in 1999, that's good money.
Yeah.
It's really good
yeah.
money, yeah.
Right? For open bar. I still had a car at the time. I no longer have a car. Unrelated. I just don't have a car now. But back then I had a car. Open bar. Had a pretty good show. It was my dad's birthday, December 11th, my dad's birthday.
Yep.
And I had these two drinks and I wasn't even enjoying them. And I'm like, what the hell you doing? And it
Right.
was like I was done. Like with this quiet little moment after all of the drama and all
Yeah.
of the Michigas.
So
and
it
all
wasn't
back
like,
and forth for years. It was just kind of like, I'm done.
yeah, it wasn't like I hit rock, because we've had people who literally, I mean, we had someone on who told us that she did a show in
New York.
No, I think it was New Jersey,
And ended up in New
ended
York?
up in New
Oh,
York,
that's what it
in
was, yeah.
Manhattan, sleeping
Right.
in someone's fireplace that she didn't even know.
Right.
And she's like, I woke up that day and I was like, this is rock bottom. This is my rock bottom. Absolutely.
Oh,
well-
no, I have all those stories. And
Yeah,
all those
but that's
stories
not
the
when
way
it
I kept Going
happened.
back to AA. I had
Right,
all of
right.
those stories, right?
Yeah, no, that December 11th, you just had the realization at that point. That
That
was
you were
it.
done.
It just,
But it's weird. It was weird because it was a night when things were so good and I wasn't
Right.
enjoying it, right? It was one of those kind of nights where you have a good set, you're making good money, you're making good money on an off night because it's the holidays, you're getting done early, you're getting ready to drive home. And it's just like, so everything should feel good. So why are you doing this and what's wrong? And
Right.
literally it was like,
yeah.
a very quiet moment, which was very different than when I quit smoking. Now, when I quit smoking, and that'll be 4 years in June. Apparently, we're going to do a whole recovery podcast.
That's fine.
That-
We can
yeah.
do it. Yeah. But this
So,
is what's
anyway.
behind the funny. That's why we talk to comics
Right.
about what goes on in their life off stage, not just
Now,
on
listen.
stage.
So check out quitting smoking. June
Yeah.
8th, 4 years this month, this June coming up.
Yep.
4 years in a week. So I had tried to quit smoking for years, unable to do it, but I always tried not to smoke when I went home around my mom and my sisters.
Okay.
So I'm going
Yep.
home 1 June for whatever. I don't know. It was before the pandemic. Probably visit my mom, whatever, nice weather. And I had a bus at the bus stop before I went down to Delaware. So I didn't have a cigarette that night. And then I was still at my mom. So I didn't have one the next night. And then I read somewhere that if you go 72 hours, that's the first hurdle. So I'm like, let me go 72 hours. And then it was like, I wonder if I can make it a week. And then it's like, I wonder if I can make it 2 weeks. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
I heard somewhere that if you can make it for 8 weeks, that's like another hurdle. Meanwhile, it's driving me crazy. Like
Right. You're
it's
going
like
out of
the
your
worst
mind.
kind of physical Jones.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
way worse than anything I went through in the program
Right.
with the drinking and dry goods. It is like a real kind of physical kind of thing.
Right.
At like day 56, something like that. I'm sharing this with all the smokers out there. Like day 56, 58, something like that. It just lifted all
Yeah.
of the angst and all of the urge. I still wanted to, but that
Yeah.
feeling of like
That
coming
physical
out of your
feeling.
own chest, about, oh my God, how am I, white knuckling it? The white knuckling lifted at day 56. And then I just kept with it. And I don't know why. I don't know why it worked that time. I don't know why cold turkey worked after trying the gum and the patch and Wellbutrin
Right.
and this and that, but it just did. And it was,
You were ready.
it was like a game with myself. Can I make it a month?
Right.
Can I make it 6 weeks?
You put up these mental milestones so
Right.
that you were going through the physical withdrawals, but
Right.
mentally you're like, yeah, but I think I can make it. 3
Well,
more
it's-
days
yeah.
and it's 2
Yeah.
weeks.
And,
or-
once you hit that first hurdle, you're like, well, I've already put this work in.
Right.
Let me make it
right.
to the next one. Then you make that, and you're like, well, I put all this work in. So, that was.
And the gift from the universe was the next milestone was 90 days. Because I was like thinking, well, that's what we do in the program, go 90
Yeah,
right, yeah.
days. You've already got 6 weeks. That's halfway, that kind of thing. But for whatever reason, it actually, am I doing math right? I couldn't have had 6 weeks. 6 times 7 is 42. No, I did 6 weeks, right? Because I'm like, you're halfway. So let's do the 90-day thing. And then just magically somewhere in the late 50s, 56, 57, 58, 59. I remember it was before 2 months. I didn't even have to go the 90. And the most urgent part of it lifted.
That's awesome.
I would say to anybody out there trying to cold turkey it, try and make it to day 59.
Yeah.
Try and make it to day 59.
Yeah, just
Right.
get 60
You can always
days in.
stop
Yeah.
on day 60. You can always go buy a pack of cigarettes on day 60.
Right.
Now, once you get hooked on comedy, though, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Once that hook gets in you, that's a little deeper. That's a little different.
That's
It
a
really
good
is.
segue,
Now-
Scott. Look at you.
It is.
See how I did that?
Professional
You should
interview.
do this for a living, Scott.
Yeah.
See how I did that right there?
Yeah.
you
Wow.
like
See
that,
what I did there?
my buddy. So, how long, have you been doing stand up now? How many?
Well, see, that's just the way to call me old. That's all that was.
Hey,
No, we're old, too.
we've all been putting in the time.
Yeah.
I'm the most young
The
when it
newest
comes to
one at 20 years, right?
22 years. I'm the most
22.
young.
I am an oddity amongst comics insofar as I will tell you my real age and I will tell you how long I've been doing comedy for real.
All
and
right.
I find that a lot of comics shave both. So I will be 63 on June 20th.
Wow, you totally don't look 60.
Not at all.
That's sweet of you to say. And
Yeah.
I first touched a microphone, my very first open mic. I don't remember the day because I had a few to get through it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was July of 1990. So
Wow. Yep,
from
33
ever
years.
having gotten behind a mic, I'm in my 33rd year.
Yep.
And I would say I was doing it professionally. I caught on real quick, luckily.
Yep.
And I would say I was doing it professionally from like 93 on. So like this is probably my 30th year professionally.
Professional.
Oh, awesome.
Wow.
Now, do you remember that first time you touched a microphone?
It's an embarrassing story, but it was an open mic.
Should be. It
was
should
an
be.
it was an opening. It was an open mic. It was okay. So man, here's another story. So I was how long
We like
ago?
those.
So
Yeah.
I went to the University of Delaware, where I was a theater major, and then I moved to New York in the 80s to be an actor. But then things got so crazy in New York that I pulled what you call a geographic, which is you move to try and get away from your problems, right?
Mhm.
Like my problems are in New York, so let me go somewhere else. But I tried to cover it with art. So what I
yes.
did was I went to the very wonderful man, Cleveland Morris, that ran the Delaware Theater Company
Mhm.
back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I asked him if I could have an internship with the theater company to do some understudying and to pick up equity points, because at the time I was still trying to be a stage actor.
Mm-hmm.
Really, all I wanted to do was get out of New York, get home, see if I could get everything back together again.
Yeah.
Some friends of mine were doing what we now call bar shows,
Yep.
which we didn't even know that's what they were back then.
Yeah.
Right.
They were going to bars and they were doing comedy. And because I was their big New York actor friend, they had no idea what a loser I was, right? But I was the guy who had actually moved to New York to try and do it out of all of this, right? They had no idea what it actually looked like. Frank, could you come to the shows and tell us what you think? So actually, I started watching the shows, had no desire to perform. Every once in a while, I would make a little suggestion. Every once in a while, I would put in my 2 cents. Mostly would just hang out with the guy. And then the bug started to get me. I wonder if I could do this. But at first, I didn't even want to try stand-up. So at first, I was like, hey, do one of you guys want to do a sketch or something like that? Not in true stand-up form. None of them were into doing live sketches. They just wanted their own time behind the mic.
Yeah.
Of course.
Finally, I got ready to move back to New York. And I know I was going to move back to New York in August of 1990. Still considered myself an actor, but said to myself that I wanted to at least try it before I left. So I went to Andy Scarpetti's open mic at the Comedy Cabaret in Wilmington, Delaware, in the original location. I did their open mic. My girlfriend at the time went with me. She said I was very entertaining considering. And
But she had to break it off after that night.
And the considering is I was so loaded, I don't remember a single thing I said.
Oh, shit.
Really?
That was that much liquid courage involved in my first time.
Wow.
Here-
And
but here-
I've seen guys do that at
Yeah.
open mics that I was at, that they are so loaded when they get up there. You're like, they're using the mic stand as a crutch to kind of
Right.
hold themselves steady
Yeah.
so they don't fall off the stage.
right. Now, I think being a pro and having a wooden leg, it may not have looked like that to people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
like, and I'm sure I just came off with that kind of open mic or demented game show host kind of energy that
Yeah.
I
Right.
have in the beginning, which I have not ever entirely lost, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's like I do remember that she said, no, you were actually pretty good, and
That's all you needed to hear to fuel the fire, right?
so, dude, here's the best part of this story. So I moved back to New York. I move in with my girlfriend at the time, and I say to myself, I'm going to start doing stand up on the side, but I still consider myself an actor. So I started doing pre-shows, which were just basically bringer shows, but they were a lot more gentle back then,
Right.
at Stand Up New York.
Okay.
When I got back in August and September and October of 1990. And back then, you could do a pre-show on a Friday or Saturday night. You only had to bring 3 people. And you got a spot on the 7 o'clock show before the real show.
Right.
Because back in the 90s, it wasn't quite, as usury, is that the word I'm looking for? It wasn't quite as exploitative, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
A bringer show was like,
Yeah.
As long as you brought 3-4 people, that was
Right.
fine. You didn't have to bring 6 to 10,
20
Right.
people.
or 20
Right.
people. Right.
Like I want to see you get on in an A room in the city now at a 7 o'clock show on a weekend, bringing 3
Yeah.
people. I
Yeah.
wanna see
no,
you.
exactly.
No.
You
Yeah,
know.
we've got friends that, newer comics that are like, oh, I played at this, and I won't mention names, but, oh, I got to play at this place. And it's like, how many people did you have to bring? Well, 10.
So here's the funny part of the story for any comedy fans out there that know anything about the New York scene back in the 90s. So I'm doing open mics, but I still consider myself an actor. I've done a handful of shows. And finally, I do a comedy contest on the Upper West Side. I swear to God, I might be wrong, but I think Mark Maron was one of the judges.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know if it was at the West End or one of those kind, but it was someplace on the Upper West Side.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that, and I came in second in the contest.
Wow.
But it was that first night when it all just came together and you
Yep.
felt like you were talking like a comic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I went home and I told my girlfriend at the time, you know what? I think I'm going to be a comic. I think I'm more suited to that. And then the punchline of the whole bit is, for those of you that have been around long enough, you know who won the comedy contest where I came in second in November of 1990? High-powered Howard and Pac-Man. Do you remember them?
No.
A couple of really big guys that would rap in tutus.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
jeez.
One of them was white, one of them was African American.
Oh
Big
my
fellas.
God.
And are they
Really?
still
Wore
working
tutus
today?
and would do comedy raps.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No, they're not working today, are they?
I've been in. Yeah, it's funny because you do these contests, and I've done a couple of them, and I know I remember one I lost. I don't remember the guy doing comedy like a year later.
no.
Never
Right.
mind 20 years later.
Most of the contests that I ever came in, I would usually come in at like second or fourth or whatever. But the winners aren't even doing comedy anymore. That's why I hate contests. I mean, contests are good. They help build your character. They help you learn how to compete and stuff. But they're so subjective, and it's not realistic because those people that win a lot of times aren't even really comics. They just fill the room.
So can I share the joke with your audience that I do
Please.
about comedy from roughly in and around that time?
Please.
Sometimes as an opening joke, normally out of town, I'll say to people, if you think you recognize me, you might if you watched Comedy Central with a microscope during the early 2000s, because a few times I was on a show called Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn.
Yeah.
And on my show, there was Kevin Hart and Keith Robinson and Patrice O'Neill and Judy Gold. So clearly they have all won a race that I'm still running.
That's a great line.
Like if this were a marathon, they'd be Kenyans.
Yeah.
And I'd be the guy from your office walking in a bumblebee suit for March of Dimes.
Yeah. That's great.
That's my joke. That's
Awesome. Yeah.
the longevity of the career.
It's all about hey, look at the tortoise and the hare. It's all
Yeah.
about
Hey, you're
slow and steady.
you're still running though.
That's right.
You're still running.
You've been around for so long. Like I heard Ace talking about Rhode Island, and I remember that room, and I used to love that room. And I don't know what happened, but I haven't been anywhere near that room in like years.
Yeah.
Well, it's completely different now. We live
career.
here. Frank, we live here and we don't work that room.
Yeah.
They have a different mindset now.
Different owners, different mindset, different,
Was that the connection that was owned by the same people that had Faneuil Hall?
Yes.
So Faneuil Hall closed. They sold
that's
off the
cool.
Providence connection a couple of years before they had closed. Well, they didn't own it, but one of the original owners of the Boston connection owned the one up in Portland, Maine. He had already closed that one.
Right.
And, new owners took it over. They went in a different direction. They didn't really, a lot of the younger guys can still get on stage there because they need features and openers.
Right.
But a lot of the headliners that they bring in, call me old. I haven't heard of a lot of them, but I'm also not watching, the next TikTok sensation or YouTube's, and I'm not saying anything against these people.
No,
they're just newer comics who've been doing it maybe 5 to 10 years.
Time out. I need to ask you two guys a question. I posted this on Facebook. A couple of people answered. So what do you think of people using TikTok or their own podcasts as credits?
All right, because I use this as a credit.
I don't think of it when I use.
But I'm trying to get more listeners.
Right. When I'm
using it.
When I have them mention the podcast, I don't just use that alone.
No.
I use a regular credit and then mention the podcast more to get more listeners.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it. I don't because if I don't just say from the podcast Behind the Funny.
Right.
I try to use a legitimate credit and then add that just as advertisement more than anything else.
Right.
Is the way I look at it.
Especially,
I don't think you should use any social media as an advertisement,
and especially
or a credit. Excuse me.
I like using the podcast, especially when it's an older crowd, so that I can get up there
set you up a joke
and literally open up with, I know you guys are all listening to podcasts. These are old timey radio shows that you could subscribe to if you knew how to use your phone. It's
I'll tell you. I mean, because you guys know that I put together a few shows too here.
Yeah.
And it's like. And listen, like no disrespect meant, like I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I think it's great that people, because there's such a log jam in New York City now, and there's not nearly the TV opportunities that there were when we started out.
Right.
But a lot of social media, a lot of festivals, a lot of podcasts end up on the flyer.
Well,
yeah.
And I think some of that is exactly what you said. The opportunities for the TV, for the actual stuff has gotten less and less.
Credits have had to adjust to that too because
I know some very, very funny comics, some competent, hilarious, funny comics, and they just haven't had that opportunity for that TV credit or anything yet. Right. And so they're still saying this guy travels around the country, you know, can be heard here or there or whatever, because they don't have that really big credit yet. But they're going to deliver when they're on stage.
But I also think there's a difference between being famous on TikTok and being famous on TikTok but actually having an act. Like, we know someone who blew up on TikTok and blew up on Reels and is hilarious on it. He has this character that he's created. But the guy's been a solid stand-up comic for over 25 years.
Right.
He's just now... TikTok is now affording him the ability to have people reach out to him and say, hey, come to Wyoming. We'll put together a show for you. Right. And that's how they're selling it as seen on TikTok. Right. But to just say that you've got some funny videos on TikTok and use that.
Well, if you're going to use that, Frank, you better have 2 million followers.
Right.
You better be huge.
And you better be funny when you get on stage, though.
You can't. Well, and it depends. If you're like, a comic who became big on TikTok, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But then there are those people, and we've seen them, who became influencers, became big on social media, and then they get booked at a comedy club, even though they're not really true comedians.
And they're not doing stand up. They're doing a multimedia show where they're showing some of their videos, and talking about it. You know.
Now, the only thing that I would say, and I don't want to sound like I'm virtue signaling here, but the only clapback I would say is everything that's old is new again, right? Like
exactly.
I can remember doing shows with celebrities back in the day where I was the opening act, and then the celebrity who was the headliner would only do a half an hour, and your close would have to be 15 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there's always been there's always been the covering of celebrities who want to do stand up, but maybe it's not their primary purpose.
There's several stories that come up around here.
Maybe soap opera stars.
I'm not mentioning any names.
I'll mention names.
I'll drop names.
I'm not mentioning any names because I want to work with Roger Paul again. So.
I'll mention names.
Now,
is Roger Paul still booking?
Yeah, Roger's still out there. Roger's still going strong. Hey, he's got an office on Broadway.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, hey, my favorite story of that, Frank, is Brian Dunkelman. He's exactly. He was the co-host on season 1 of American Idol with Ryan Seacrest. They had 2 hosts, and at the end of the season 1, he didn't re-sign because he figured that fame is going to blow him up on the road doing stand-up. And he got booked at the Comedy Connection in East Providence. And they had, I don't know if you remember from the Boston area, a guy named Kevin Knox.
Yes.
Noxie. Noxie was, love Noxie. Yeah. So Noxie is his opener. Well, he's there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, Dunkelman. And he's the big name, as seen on American Idol. He's selling the place out. So they have Noxie go up, do 25 minutes as his opener. He goes up, he does 20 minutes, says thank you, good night, walks off the stage.
Right.
Well, immediately Debbie goes in the back and is like, Brian, what are you doing? You're the headliner. You're supposed to do like 45, 50 minutes. And he goes, I only have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And she goes, what? He goes, yeah, I only have 20 minutes. I that's all I can do. So the next night she flipped them. And Dunkelman was the opener, and Noxie would close with 45 to 50 and blow the room up because he was absolutely hilarious.
And get paid a fraction of what Dunkelman was getting.
And he's probably
paid.
getting $100 while Dunkelman's getting 10 grand or something like that. And that story got all over Boston, about, here's this big guy on TV and everything comes in, he can barely do 20 minutes in the room.
Well,
he put asses
all
in
because
the
of a
seat.
credit, because of a simple credit that put asses in a seat.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. I still
that's fine.
have this Zoom StreamYard give and take thing done where I don't step on people sometimes.
No. We've took a while for us to figure out too.
We've been doing this 7 years and we're still figuring it out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't. we all have stories like that. We all went through that, and it's like, I guess there was a time when I thought that like that was uncool, but now I'm almost kind of glad that it happened, because it was certainly baptism by fire when that kind of stuff happened to us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Right.
and side story to that, Frank, Dunkelman's still doing stand-up to this day.
Yeah.
So, you know, it wasn't something that he was a flash in the pan.
No, it was just
or
that
anything
he
like
was-
that. He was a comic, but he just wasn't experienced enough yet.
right.
And now he's still out there doing it. So, and from what I've heard, he's a very good comic. So it's no slight against him.
He just got the opportunity
Right.
too early. He
was
wasn't ready.
He was hot at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all. That's what the, you know, kind of the moral to that story is, and that's what happens a lot of times with these social media people or YouTube sensations.
Right.
One thing becomes hot, they get thrust into the spotlight, and they don't have enough to really fill the bill.
Yeah, you know, sometimes it goes the other way, though. I remember it being like 1994, something like that, and being at the Stress Factory in New Brunswick, and somebody comes up to me after the show and is like, "Hey, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but I put comics on Opie and Anthony," and I'm like, "I don't want to do radio."
Oh shit!
Oh,
Are you
seriously?
kidding me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god!
Those guys were great for comics.
I know. I mean, but back in the day, like that was like my I want to be Bill Hicks someday snootiness, you know?
Right.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
yeah, it's like, what's next, Brother Wheeze? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah,
doing
right.
Bob and Tom next week?
Yeah. Right.
Because we had all done too many tours where you had
Yeah.
to do the AM radio gig,
Yeah.
going in
Right.
and try and promote
Yeah.
the weekend in Burlington, Vermont, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And they wanted you to do part of your act on
And
the
so I had
radio.
no idea, and I didn't know nothing about Jersey. It's like, a little show. We use comics and we flip them, we mix them up and everything. If you're ever
Right.
interested, you know. Cut to 30 years later, and I'm begging John Fugelsang to let me be on Tell Me Everything.
Yeah. Right. Hey, cut to 30 years later, you're on Behind the Funny
Behind
from
the
my
Funny.
basement.
and in a friend's house on her computer.
Borrowing a computer.
Right? And I can't even sign on the Wi-Fi. You know, that's the point. That's the point that it's gotten to.
Yeah,
But
right. So-
that's the thing too. When I don't know if you guys, do you guys, when you get together, do you start to tell the near miss stories about I almost got this movie role, or
Oh yeah.
I almost, I was almost a cast member.
What's your
here.
famous story about you and what's his
Al
name?
Del Benny?
Al Del Benny.
I mean, I don't know. Do you know Al Del Benny?
I don't.
I think he went out to L.A. and now he's down in Sydney, Australia.
Right.
But we auditioned together for a movie in Boston, and I'll never forget it. It was like, this script is so stupid. It
Did
was
you get a
like-
call back?
No, well, we didn't get a call back, but she liked us.
Yeah,
she
okay.
definitely. The casting director definitely liked us. She said we had good chemistry because we had known each other. We weren't like best friends, but so. I don't know if you've ever heard this story. You know, before Dane Cook was just doing stand-up.
Before he was Dane Cook.
Before he was Dane Cook, he was actually he was in a sketch comedy group, and it was called Al and the Monkeys. Well, Al from that is Al Del Benny. There was Al Del Benny, Dane Cook, Robert or Bobby Kelly, depending on how long
Bobby
you've
Kelly,
known him.
that name I know.
And then there was one other guy, and they did sketch comedy. Well, I've known Al for a while, so we did this thing, and it was right. I don't know if it was before or after. I think it was right after Dumb and Dumber had come out. So the movie was these two goofy, dumb guys and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and to this day, he still calls me Brother Deedle because it was a movie called Meet the Deedles. And so I always talk about how, I don't know, some guy, Paul Walker, got one of the roles, and it's probably like what Paul Walker, if he was still alive, probably wanted it erased from his IMDb. Meanwhile, that would have been front and fucking center on my IMDb. You know?
Yeah, me and Natterman both got called back for Pootie Tang by CK.
No.
Did you really?
Yeah, we both got called back, and he ended up giving the role to Attell.
Oh, shit.
Like, we went through the actual audition callback
Yeah.
process, and it was down
Right.
to the two of us. And the next thing we know, I'm going with Dave, but you guys are great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, you either one of you could have pulled that off.
Yeah.
Because Natterman's hilarious too.
Yeah.
So,
Oh God,
e-
isn't he?
Oh,
It's
he's
hysterical.
brilliantly funny.
He's like a kind of timeless funny that
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I have ever. And I'm sure he's got war stories too. I don't think I've ever seen him do poorly. Like
No.
I've
Really? Yeah,
ever
no.
not seen him have a good set.
It looks effortless when he's up there just talking,
Yeah.
you know, and he's just getting laugh after laugh after laugh.
Yeah.
It just, he makes it look effortless.
He really does.
You know,
He
and
really
and you know, not to rub it in your face, but he used to go on Opie and Anthony, and
That's
you
what
know,
happened.
Because I was a huge fan of that show, and he would kill on that show.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he
there
did.
was nothing better than when those guys would have a bunch of comics on the show,
Shitting
and
on
comics would be
people.
shitting on each other,
Oh, yeah.
and just busting each other up. And the winner always, when he was around, was Patrice O'Neill.
Oh,
he
yeah.
could
He
destroy
just
the
ruined
entire
everyone.
room.
I know.
Yeah.
And especially if Voss was in the room, because Voss was just cannon fodder for everybody
Yeah.
that was in the room.
Here's my Voss story.
Okay.
Voss story. I anytime I talk to new comics, I share this with them. So I'm doing a pre-show. I hope I have the dates right. I'm doing one of these pre-shows in 1990 that I'm telling you about.
Yep.
And Voss got me good. Voss was there, and I come off stage, and Voss is like, "Hey, yeah, good job. That's pretty funny. How long you been doing it?" And I said 3 months. He goes, 3 months? Give me a fucking cup of coffee.
That's what's so interesting
That's
about
my Voss story.
That's what's so interesting about him is he was fodder on Opie and Anthony. So you think like, oh, this guy's just a fucking, everyone
Idiot.
busts his balls. He's an idiot. But man, he's a bigger ball buster than they ever were. I don't know how the hell they turned the tables because I don't know if you remember, but when we all did the 24-hour.
No, that's not when he insulted us.
No?
When we were
Was
doing
it
the
for-
benefit for Bob Nelson.
Oh, were you on the
I
benefit
did
for
that.
Bob Nelson?
I did the Bob Nelson thing.
Yeah.
With
So
drinks
we
versus
went on
food.
for a little while too.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
went on for a little while, but we were from here. And of course, Voss knows everyone else that's on there.
Except for us.
Except for us. And he goes, "Oh, and Ace and Scott. Where are you two calling in from? Obscurity?" And you know what? I couldn't even be pissed because it was like we just got shit on by Rich Voss.
I just
That
got
was
roasted
awesome,
by
you know?
Voss. That was awesome.
You were just talking about Natterman and how effortless he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about that's effortless about Natterman, but Natterman was effortless with what appeared to be well thought out written material.
Yes.
Voss is flawless with what looks like crowd work. And I
Yes.
think,
Yes.
Yes.
and I think we all know it can't all be crowd work.
Right.
No.
Right.
Some of it's got to be pointed. Some
He's
of it's
saying
gotta
the
be,
same.
I'm
Yeah, the
gonna
same
back
thing.
you into a corner and
Yes.
you're going to say a certain thing. So I
Yes.
can
Right.
sit over here.
And there's a guy in Rhode Island like that, Frank, that is brilliant with crowd work, but he knows how to weave the conversation to bring it around. So he's in control the whole time.
And you might
He
have
did-
worked.
John Parada.
You might have worked
That
with
does
John
sound- that
back in
does
the
sound
day.
familiar. That
His
does
whole
sound-
act looks like it's crowd work, but he's saying the same things every night. It's just to different people, and sometimes it's different reactions. But what makes John funny too is when he turns around and he goes, "What do you do for a living, brother?" And they say something that he literally can't think of anything funny to say, and he goes, "That's cool. I got nothing for that." Like he acknowledges the elephant in the room.
That's when
know?
you hear all the comics in the corner just
Busting
bust
out
out laughing
laughing.
when John has nothing.
Yeah.
But he's one of those guys that he can control the conversation most of
Right.
the time, get them to say something he needs to set
Right.
up what he wants to say next.
Exactly.
And that's a great skill set to have when you're doing
On its own.
crowd work and type of thing. And those guys that do that, like John is great when he's interacting with the crowd, and he almost looks more comfortable with that than when he's just trying to do material.
his material.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well,
You know?
we've all been through that. I call that. I say that working the crowd like too much before you want to do material. I'm like, don't give the dog people food. That's what I call it. Don't give the dog people food, because I think we've all been through. You work the crowd and you're blowing it up, and now they just don't want material.
Well,
Right. And that's
Right?
why
They do.
John can't.
Yeah.
You never want to follow John. Like if we're on a showcase with a bunch of headliners,
Right.
and John's like, "Ace, you want to close? You got the most experience." I'm like, "No, John, because the lift to have to follow you
Right.
after you're just blowing out the crowd, they don't want to go back to material after
Right.
that.
Well,
I'll go
They
on
don't.
before
They
you."
don't.
Especially if it's one of those bar shows you were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
which he tends to do a lot of.
He
right.
does a lot of those, and they love that type of humor.
Yeah.
Oh, so
So,
did you see in your chat here somebody saying that Voss was funny, but people tend to shit on him? Do people do that? I didn't.
yeah, they do.
yeah.
Well, they
Do
did
they
when he was
really?
on
Oh, yeah.
on Opie and Anthony.
Oh, yeah,
I heard
Gemini
people shit
Scribe.
on him a lot. And I think that was kind of
And that's-
unfair because at times I think he almost played the almost like a
The fool.
caricature of himself.
See, I just know him as a legend. To me, he's just he's Rich
Yeah.
Voss, the legend.
No, but
yeah,
I-
he
I
was
think he
one of
even
the.
says the legend in his promos now.
Does he really?
Yeah, but
well,
on-
because he was one of those first guys that you saw on Comedy Central. I'll never forget. It was the hallucinogenic toads,
Right.
Where he was like, you'd see a toad go by. You're like, who's sitting there watching a toad go by? I think I'm going to lick that toad, see what happens. Like that was one of the first bits on Comedy Central.
Well,
so to me, that's how he was.
Right.
And then you'd see him on Opie and Anthony, and everyone was piling him
Well,
on.
they
piling on him.
portrayed him as a dumb
The
person because
idiot.
they kept a list on the wall in the studio, or they said they did, of words he couldn't pronounce,
Right.
and names he couldn't pronounce, and then they played their version of Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, where they took their dumbest intern and put them up against Rich and asked these dumb questions, and he would get stuff wrong, and some of that is radio bits, so
Right.
he's portraying a certain side of things for the radio, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you watch his stand up is great.
Yeah.
Is absolutely hilarious, and the guy, to have the wit that he has, you can't be a dumb person.
Yeah.
You got to be a smart person. So
I
obviously he plays a convincing character.
Right. Yeah, I just
by
put
the
up.
way, Gemini, I disagree that Geraldo's death is unnoticed. I disagree.
think-
with
I
that.
do. I agree. I agree with you, Frank.
I
I
think it's
disagree
not.
with that assessment.
I think it's not unnoticed by the comics, but I don't know if people But I don't know if that many mainstream people knew him other than the roasts anyway.
Well, he did have the short TV show.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
she said, I feel it didn't get a lot of attention. I was stunned.
Well,
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's kind of
I-
true.
I
But I
agree.
think since then, a lot of people have brought it up and just how skilled he was as a
Because
as a comic.
I see a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff like that where they show like his best roast moments and his
Yeah.
best appearances here, or his best on you mentioned Tough Crowd. He
Right.
a lot of people put his best appearances on Tough Crowd because that he was so good at that type of stuff.
Right.
He was such a smart guy. And I don't know if everybody realized that he had a law degree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
There's a few guys. I mean, that's the third person that I can think of.
Paul
that-
D'Angelo.
Paul D'Angelo.
Right.
Paul Mercurio
Paul Mercurio.
was a
Dino
lawyer.
Vidala. Dino Vidala was a lawyer.
Really?
Yeah. I think Al Martin went to law school, but I don't know if he ever went as far as becoming a lawyer. There's a lot of lawyers. Although now it seems like it's more teachers going into comedy.
Yeah,
I
Back
know.
then,
There's a
lot of
whole.
lawyers. Now it's a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I was going to say about Greg before we move on,
Yeah.
besides the fact that he was obviously brilliant, is you want to talk about forgotten geniuses. Nobody mentions Richard Jenny anymore.
I
Oh,
talked
know.
about him several times.
We talk
And
about him all the
Platypus-
time.
Platypus
might have been-
Man is one of my favorite specials ever.
And he might have been the best technical comic in the past 40 years. Like
Yes.
he's a straight up technical
Yeah.
comedian. And
Absolutely.
I agree, Frank. You want to watch a brilliant special, people? Anybody listening, watching right now? Platypus Man.
Platypus
Richard
Man.
Jenny is a brilliant
Yeah.
comedy special.
Yeah.
I'm so happy you said that because he's a guy that doesn't get mentioned enough, as a brilliant
No.
And
comedian.
and he was one that I think because he passed away so long ago,
yeah.
Yeah.
he's gotten forgotten. But man, I think to comics, everyone knows, like you said, he was a technical genius.
Well, it's been a long time for
comedy.
Greg too now, hasn't it? It's been
Yeah.
quite a little while now for Greg as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's been a little while for Greg as now.
It's strange how certain people affect other people and some other people don't affect them the same way because
Yeah.
they still have a Patrice O'Neill benefit every year.
Yeah.
Right.
But there hasn't been a benefit for Greg Giraldo every year.
Right.
Right.
So it's weird, and I think because Patrice, his death was just, hit people as tragic because you have a stroke at your early 40s and then you pass away
because of a health condition,
because of his health conditions and everything, but I don't know. I it's just one of those things. It's weird to me that, and I love both of them equally. I thought they both were brilliantly funny, and why one gets that kind of consideration, the other one doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't answer that.
No idea. No idea. But it would be great if there would almost be. I mean, I think that's the only thing. There's a lot of talented comics coming up. Next wave. There's a lot of people that even started as recently as the pandemic. I mean, talent will always be talent. Right. I just wish that sometimes some of these folks coming up knew who these others were.
Yeah.
Knew who Bill Hicks was.
Yes.
I mean, there's a handful of people. Pryor's one of them. Carlin's one of them that everybody always knows. Rob Williams, of course. But there's a lot of guys that it's like, I mean, what Kennison did for the business.
Yes.
And you just wonder if this talented group over here knows.
Do they know the history, the true history?
Right.
Who kicked open that door for you?
But
right.
Some of these newer comics don't even realize the history in their own local market.
We talk about this all the time.
We've talked about this. I've been at shows where some younger comic has a good set, and then someone and I'm just throwing out names. I'm not saying this specifically happened, but someone's like, "Who the fuck is Don Gavin?" Don Gavin, it's a fucking
Don Gavin,
right? Well, or they're like, "Yeah, how come there's all these shows talking about Gavin or Kevin Knox
or Lenny Clark
or Lenny Clark? Who the fuck is Lenny Clark?" Yeah, it's like these are the guys that paved the way and started the Boston comedy scene, and I see it here in Rhode Island where people are like, Charlie Hall, isn't that guy that does the Ocean State Follies, that cabaret show? Yeah. If it wasn't for Charlie Hall, there would have been no Periwinkles, which was the original comedy club here in Rhode Island. Right. There would have been no comedy scene if Frank O'Donnell and Charlie Hall hadn't started that. Right. That's the thing that it's disheartening. I'm not saying you got to kiss their asses, but at least acknowledge the fact that you wouldn't be doing this shitty bar show if it wasn't for these guys. You wouldn't have an opportunity to get up on stage. Because
the generation that's there now, they look at now and forward. They don't look back. Well, and I think we absorbed a lot of stuff that came before us because of records and different things like that. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, my grandfather, playing Jonathan Winters for me, playing, about the Bob Newhart, the Button Down Mime, stuff like that. And then my friends' older brothers would play records for me. So I learned about comedy through this older stuff. And then I got into it as I got in high school when I could listen to the newer stuff and everything like that. So these guys go on YouTube and see the newest thing. Yeah. So they're not getting into the history of comedy. Right.
Hey, we got to get to wow moments in a minute.
Yes.
But our listener, Gemini Scribe, said, "What do you guys think of John Mulaney? I think he's very funny." It's funny that you bring him up because I had my physical today. And the whole time I'm looking at my doctor going, holy shit, I never realized he looks just like John
doctor,
Mulaney.
Can you not put your finger in there, please?
I don't know. That's a little crazy.
That's not bad.
I'm working
That's
on
not
it.
bad.
That's funny.
Frank, you mentioned some amazing names of comedians and people.
I got to ask real quick.
Go ahead, please.
I just got to ask real quick. Do people still tell Teddy Bergeron stories up there?
Yes, we do all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, Teddy just passed away this past year.
Yeah.
In fact, we should get Teddy Barrett on, his cousin, who's also a comic.
We should tell some stories about Teddy.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever worked with Teddy, that I was one of those guys, I get booked with him. I'm like, oh, I heard about him. I can't wait to work with him. Yeah, you got to pick him up and bring him to the gig.
He doesn't
because he could not drive. But anyway,
he was not sober for 24 years.
I think isn't the Tonight Show story, I think, is the classic.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
That's the classic. Yeah.
That's a legendary story up here in New England with Teddy Bergeron. And then he also had a great night on Letterman as well, early on in Letterman's career, that he went on and just destroyed on that show as well.
Story about the guy stepping over him and saying, I saw you were really funny on, or whatever. What is I don't know, what's the version of that story you guys know? The version that we were told in New York is that after he did the Tonight Show, he got so out of control that he was literally in a gutter.
Yes,
And
passed out.
somebody stepped over him and went, "Saw you on the Tonight Show. You were really funny."
Yes, yeah.
Is that true? Is that the true
Yes,
story?
Barclay told that story.
Oh, that's right. Paul Barkley.
Paul
did.
Barclay told that story. Yeah, he went out, partied a little too much, passed out
Right.
on the literally in the gutter,
Right,
and
literally
someone
on the
recognized him as they were stepping over him.
Right. Yeah. I never know
Yeah.
if that was true or urban legend.
It may, the source that told us is a pretty reliable source.
Yeah,
I
he
think,
was one of the original owners of the Comedy Connection, Paul Barkley.
Yeah, started it in the late 70s, and I
So-
think he managed Teddy for a while.
Oh,
So
cool.
I do believe that story is true. And same thing with his arrest in Texas,
Oh yes.
where he had to call get bail money so he could make it to the Tonight Show.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yeah.
He almost missed his Tonight Show appearance because he got arrested in
he got
Texas
arrested,
for
yeah.
drunk and disorderly, and he had no money for the bail money, so he had to call up to Boston to get it Western Union down so he could get out in time to make the train to get up to Los Angeles to make it to the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
That's another Teddy story.
It's tough to get sober in this business, though. I'll be
Oh,
honest
yeah.
with you. A lot of
Yeah.
people are tough on them, and even when you try, I remember in the beginning. That was a long time ago, and I may not be your cup of tea, but I remember in the beginning there was a couple of club owners who would be like, "You were funnier when you were drinking."
Oh really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, there's a couple guys that would say
Yeah,
that to
talk
you
about-
while you were like trying to find your sea legs again.
Yeah, that's not
Absolutely.
necessarily supporting behavior on their part.
That's like a friend of ours when he lost a ton of weight, and everyone said, "You were funnier when you were
When you were
fat."
fat.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
That's-
What's your act going to be now? What are you
It's-
talking
right.
about now?
It's so disheartening when someone says you feel like
Yeah.
you've made a change for the better, and everyone goes, "You used to be better."
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Such a kick in the
Yeah.
balls.
Have
when
a few
that happens.
cheeseburgers and get funny.
Now, Frank,
Yeah, we want to
obviously,
be respectful of your time because we know you got something else going on.
in 33 years, man, you've had an amazing career. What were some of the highlight moments, like maybe that first time you got to work with a big name act, or a big place you've got to do, where those moments where you just kind of take it.
How long you got? You
Well,
know?
a few examples of those moments, because we all have them when you stand there and go, I can't believe that I'm here right now and I get to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, a few of them. I would say one was being in Montreal in 2002,
Yeah.
just up there to see another comic, and a comic got sick, and I ended up being asked to host Bill Maher's Best of the Fest show with him, Sean McCullen, and Tammy Pescatali.
Wow.
So getting drafted at Montreal.
That's
An
cool.
awesome.
That's
that was
cool.
huge. Complete with like them putting me in for real at the last minute.
Yep.
You know, put my name on all the stuff and everything. I still
Oh,
got it at
wow.
home in my box somewhere.
That's
So
awesome.
that was huge. That same year, doing a Armed Forces Entertainment Tour of the Middle East for 30 days.
Wow.
We were in Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Bahrain and all that kind of stuff. Opening for Howie Mandel on
Really?
a couple of
That's
SUNY
cool.
colleges where it was like 7,000 people in the crowd.
Wow.
You know, like at a field house where all you could do is tell a joke,
and just
listen
wait.
to it go out, and then have to wait for everything to come back
Yep,
off the back wall.
Right.
First time I did Caroline's first New Year's Eve gig. First time I got passed at a club. First time I made more than $1,000.
Yep.
First cruise I ever did. You know, all the firsts. All
Yeah.
the firsts.
Yeah.
It's got to be sad seeing all those legendary clubs close in the past couple of years.
Somebody asked me the other day, what was it like to work Dangerfields? I was like, you will miss the experience of literally being in what felt like a 1960s comedy club time machine.
Yeah. Right.
Like it literally felt like
Looked like and felt
this
like.
is what Lenny Bruce used to do. That's
Right.
what it felt like.
Right.
That's what it felt like. Like if I always felt like if I ever made a movie about like, because I do a little bit of that on the side too. And
Yeah.
if I ever made like a movie about Bruce or that time, it would have to be shot at Dangerfield to just mock it up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the place to go. Or if you're going to do something about Vegas, or if you're going to do something about the living room or one of those kind
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you think about it, 30, you guys are both 33 plus years in.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of history of comedy that happened in that 33
Oh, yeah.
plus years.
Oh, yeah.
Some amazing
But that's why
comics that
even
have
though
come and gone.
even
and
though I didn't
places.
play those places, to see Dangerfield's close, Caroline's
Of course.
close, you know, it's just sad to watch happen.
It really is.
You know?
It really is. Yeah.
And I can't imagine for guys like you that have actually worked those places. You know.
Well, I think, listen, man, it's a brave new world, right? I think I said that already, but it's like, okay, so coming out of the pandemic, and then also with the technology boom,
Yeah.
something's going to be happening to the clubs.
Yeah.
I did a comedy festival called the Good Karma Comedy Festival online during the pandemic. Did it
Yep.
4 times. Thinking about taking it live. And I was saying to a couple of the guys who I've been talking to about doing it, we still have to have a video component. We still have to do Zoom or stream shard shows or live stream. Like, it's not going to be like the old days where it's like, 6 live performances and a weekend in a winter.
Right.
There's going to have to be like, here's the online show where, that has comics from the West Coast coming in and stuff like that. It's changed it. And then in New York, there's a lot of comedy. There's a lot of comedy in New York. There's quite an underground scene. There's a lot of brick and mortar clubs.
Yeah.
But still pretty much, I would say the Cellar, the Stand, the Gotham, and New York Comedy Club under the new ownership. Those 4 kind of rule the roost.
Right.
Yep.
But there's a lot more than just those 4. There's still the strip. There's still stand up.
I was just going to say, is Comic Strip Live still there?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Still there and still has the cachet of the name. And every once in a while, when you talk to tourists, they'll know places by names that they've heard.
Yeah.
And not location or comics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So cool. So cool. Do you know Max Docelli?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I did a show with Max, like, oh God, last year or the year before. We did some camp area that had a restaurant in it. We did a comedy show there during a blizzard.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
It was me, Max, and Peaches Rodriguez.
Oh yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yep.
Max is, I've been friends with him for a long time. Max has those 2 T-shirts that he's had made up for Pips Comedy Club and Rick Newman's, Catch a Rising Star, and I have 2 of those from working with Max, and I love to wear those on stage, and people all the time they go, "Have you worked there?" And I'm like, I wish.
Yeah, right.
It's wish
funny.
I would have had a chance to work at those 2 places.
I just saw a post today from Fred Stoller of the old Pips.
Right.
Saying, it was like a picture of Pips back in the 70s with like these old Oldsmobiles out front. And he told a story about, about how that was like the first club that I think he worked.
Well, Pips hung on. I mean, I did Pips back in the 90s. It hung on for a while.
For a long time.
It was around for quite a while.
It was a nice little subway ride out to Brooklyn. And right there on the waterfront and I think it's right next to one of the Lenny's clams or one of them.
So we've just talked about nice comedy clubs. We talked about nice memories. We talked about wow moments. Let's flip it to the other side.
No, you're not going to, are you?
Yes, we are. We're going to finish this
We
up.
always end the show with a bad memory.
Worst show I ever had to participate in.
Yeah, we
Worcester, Massachusetts.
Okay, show's over. You don't have to even tell the story. You said Worcester, Massachusetts. Story's over. Because as for any new listeners, we like to end the show with what we call the funny bad gig story. It wasn't funny while it was happening. It was the gig that made you think maybe acting is what I should go try to do.
Yeah, maybe I should have gotten a few more equity points.
Yes, maybe I should go back and get some more equity points. But, later on, you're on a podcast with a couple of guys in a basement in Coventry.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story you tell now.
Okay, here's the funny story.
Worcester,
and I'm not going to look good in this one. It's the only time that I walked off stage.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
I'm not. Should I tell you who the booker was?
Sure, why not? They're probably dead by now.
Ronnie Sava.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I don't know if he's dead.
The Comedy Palace, baby.
Comedy Palace at the
The Aku.
Yes.
There was a hotel in Worcester.
Yep.
And on the second show, They got a little wild. They got a little drunk.
That was a rough room.
So we were going back and forth, and I did some sort of slam line. And a guy threw like a chicken wing or something at me. And I did another slam line. I don't even remember. And he got up as if he was going to come to the stage, and his friends grabbed him. And I said, Ronnie, you're not paying me enough for this, and put the mic on the stool and walked off.
And walked off. Oh my God, that's awesome.
And from that show on, Ronnie had to have security in the room.
You know what?
Yeah.
And I got to say, I don't look good in that story. So
No. You know what?
I don't like telling it because I don't look good in that story. Because if you're really a pro, you find a way to do the last 10.
No.
Yeah.
You don't walk off at 35. And
I don't know, Frank. I was doing a show one time with a headliner. The opener got up, and there was 2 bachelorette parties, and they were trying to compete for who was going to get the most attention and who was going to be the loudest. And it was rising, the noise, as he was up there. He does 15, he brings me up. I'm doing 30. They're getting worse as I'm up there. And I'm not trying to interact and make it funny. I'm just trying to tell them to shut up and stop, to try to get some control before the headliner goes up. The headliner goes up. He's 15 minutes in, and the 2 bachelorette parties are screaming at each other.
Yeah,
and yelling at each other. All of a sudden, a full glass of liquor flies from one table to the other. He's looking in the back of the room at the manager, and there was a young lady that was filling in for the manager who was off that night. And he goes, "Do we want to ask them to leave?" He says into the microphone. And she just puts her hands up, shrugs her shoulders, turns around, and goes upstairs. And he goes, "You know what? This is not worth it," and walked off the stage. And I don't blame him, because stuff was flying across the room.
That's crazy.
There was one security guy. He had no chance of controlling anything at that point. It got so out of control. Other people in the audience were leaving out of the exit in the back corner and just leaving the room. Sometimes, it's acceptable, because if there's safety, they're throwing shit at you, Frank.
A couple of chicken wings, and I'm a sturdy fella. So if you hit me with the chicken wing,
that's the name of the episode.
Days, I might have even tried to grab it with my mouth.
I'm a sturdy fella.
That's the name. We like to name the episodes after something that comes up. Frank Vignola.
I'm a sturdy fella. FELLA.
All of these are comedy just in general. All these gigs. It's like, I don't know if you guys play golf or not, but I'm like a hack golfer. I'm a horrible golfer.
Yep.
But you hit that one shot that makes you come back. Comedy is just like that. Like, you do all these gigs that you wade through, and then you get that one where this is what you thought it was going to be like. And
right. Exactly.
That's the one that brings you back.
This is the reason why I got into this. Exactly. That's awesome. Man, we can't thank you enough for being on. We know you got some other stuff going on, but we've wanted to have you on for a while. Actually, are you still doing your podcast? We were all on the same Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling channel. We had Jason Pollock on last week, and we were talking about how remember when we used to actually we'd have a meeting every once in a while to talk about, hey, let's do this, and everything kind of fizzled. But are you still doing yours?
Well, I stopped doing it once the pandemic opened back up, because I started to put my energy into creating these gigs that I've been, putting together.
Yep.
And my podcast was not like you guys with a comedy podcast. My podcast was about the supernatural. It was about the occult.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was called Night Meds. And it was about, all things unexplained.
Yep.
And I stopped doing it, but 2 weeks ago, I started talking to Rich Carucci. Do you guys know Rich?
No.
Rich Carucci, Jersey comic, very funny guy.
Yep.
Who has also done a few paranormal investigations, and we've toyed with the idea of maybe bringing it back.
That's awesome.
I hit Rick Adana up. I'm like, hey, Rick Adana, you guys still do Drinks, Joke, and Storytelling? After texting him 3 times, the third time I hear back,
hey, buddy,
I was just thinking about you.
We don't do that anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the reason Ace is getting all excited and I'm trying to leave the room is because several years ago, a friend of ours, a comedian, Tom Stewart, came on, and he is a paranormal investigator. He's got all the equipment. He's part of a group, and they do real paranormal investigations. They're friends with Taps, Jason Hawes, the guys from Ghost Hunters.
Right.
And he came on and told stories of investigations, played us evidence, everything like that. And the first time he did it was, I probably didn't speak for about, 30 minutes?
It's the first time and the quietest I've ever seen Scott in a 30-minute stretch. I looked at him. He had beads of sweat on his head. And I go, dude, you all right? He goes, I don't like this shit.
So
Well, that's all he had to tell me, Frank.
Well,
Guess what?
anyway, that first episode was Scott Scared Shitless, and now 4 years later, it's become a whole month of podcasts on call. And one of our listeners has nicknamed it Scotttober.
Yes.
So
nice.
all of October, every episode, all 4, is dedicated to paranormal, supernatural, all that type of stuff. And Ace's goal is to find a way to scare the shit out of me every single time. And even to the point where he's talked me into going on 2 investigations we've done so far. One of them at the actual Conjuring House.
Oh wow! Well, you know
Yep.
what? If to bring you in on a nice, soft kind of soft, slow rollout kind of thing. When I did mine, we would do paranormal podcasts 3 times in a week, and 3 times in a month, and then the 4th show every month would be horror movie reviews. So maybe you'd be interested in doing that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Because it's funny how Scott was so scared, but once we kind of started, we did a small investigation at a place down the street from me called the Pain House. It's one of the most haunted places in New England. We did an investigation there last summer. Then I got him to the Conjuring House. We've had Jason Hawes from Ghost Hunters on before because I'm friends with him. We've had his daughter and her boyfriend.
That's the worst ones.
Who have a haunted
Museum.
paranormal museum with artifacts and stuff.
Right.
And so
they bring the scary shit in here. The investigations are not as scary as the shit they've brought in this room.
yeah.
Man, you guys are like right in the middle. It's like
We are.
You're like that's like it. Like I don't know how you're not doing a live broadcast from Salem every October.
Well, you know what? It's funny.
Don't
because
give him any fucking ideas.
No,
all right.
Actually,
because he'll be doing a seance in the basement of the most haunted house in Salem.
Listen, we've got an idea. We haven't talked that much about it, but one of our buddies just brought it up. Was it Mitch?
Mitch Stinson.
So Mitch Stinson, comic from Boston, said, you guys have hit on this paranormal thing. So we're thinking about trying to, I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but I don't care.
You are.
We're thinking about trying to do something where we go and do a show at either a haunted hotel or theater and then do a paranormal investigation after. And, paranormal comics, whatever. I mean, there's a million paranormal groups and shit. And we're not trying to exploit it. We're just trying to show that, a lot of the places we play as comics are haunted places. There's paranormal activity in these places.
Yeah, we're going to go and we're going to film it.
And we're going
one
to
of-
film it.
One of the episodes that I did on my podcast back in the day was haunted Broadway theaters, and there's like a million of them.
A million, yeah.
Every Broadway theater has its ghost story.
I think Ace just found our executive producer.
The theater that he does in Connecticut, the Bradley Playhouse,
it was on the first season, I think, of Ghost Hunters. First or
There
second.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I mean, oh man, yeah, we're gonna definitely have.
All right,
to
Frank,
talk
we're staying in
Scotttober.
touch now. He's that's it. You're on the list.
Yeah.
He's going to be
Smelling
talking
a
to you soon.
crossover episode.
Yes.
I think it would
Yes.
be great.
Crossover episode.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man. Again, we
Thank you so much, man.
for
It's-
being on.
It was so nice talking to you again. I'm so happy we got to put this together, and we definitely got to work together again, man. I had a
Yeah.
blast back in March. I
Absolutely,
really did.
Scott, Ace. Thank you guys so much. It was a real honor to do the show. It was a blast. It was so good to see you again, Ace. And
You too,
Scott,
man.
meeting you a couple months ago and getting to do this, and more to come. Let's
Definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely.
do some comedy. Let's do some podcasting. Let's
and-
do some crossover stuff.
Definitely.
Let's see if the 3 of us can get an ASMR channel going.
Yeah,
Whatever we
that
gotta
sounds
do.
Good too.
Whatever we gotta do.
We'll just eat potato chips.
What can we promote for you, Frank, as far as like a website or social media or anything like that?
Oh man, Frank Vignola Comedy on Instagram, and
Okay.
there's a little underline between each word. Frank underline Vignola. Do you know what I mean when it's underlined?
Yeah, underscore.
Not a underscore.
Yeah,
Frank
yeah.
underscore Vignola_comedy on Instagram. And even more importantly, check out on Facebook the shows that we're putting together. Right now, the name is Slower Delaware Comedy Booking.
Okay.
Slower Delaware Comedy Booking. Definitely.
You type that into your browser, and everything that we've been doing and creating is coming up. And honestly, God, this is my new passion. Like, I love putting this stuff together.
All right, and
awesome.
I'll
So
put
cool.
links. I'll put links in the show notes for anybody listening. If you need to, just go right to the show notes, and both of those will be in there for you guys to click on. Frank, again, thank you so much, man. It was awesome.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, man.
You too, man.
Enjoy the rest of the
Be
night.
well.
We'll talk to you.
Thank you.
All right. And that was Frank Vignola. I'm so glad we got him.
I
on.
love that guy. I
me
love
too.
that guy. I mean,
I know.
it was when I met him that night in March, I already knew Kerry, and Kerry and I got along very well.
Right.
And he came in, and it was literally like three friends just hanging out,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is always great when a green
That's
room
how it
is
was
like
when
that.
I worked with him. I hadn't met him before at the Comedy Connection, and then he came in, and by the end of the night, I was like, this guy's awesome. Down to earth.
Yeah,
cool.
he just was easy to talk to. He gave me a great line to start my set with
Yeah.
because we were doing the whole Boston versus New York thing.
Yep.
So he gave me a quick line to throw out about Boston versus New York,
Yep.
and that worked really well. And he was just one of those just super guys.
That's
Super guys. So I'm glad we finally had him on.
Yeah, glad we were able to get him on and talk a little paranormal. Get
Oh
ready
my
for
God, how
Scotttober.
did that come around?
It's so funny how even before we even went live tonight, we were doing a production meeting and
Yeah.
we were talking about like, hey, we got to start solidifying our Scotttober.
But that came up so organically.
I know, I love it.
You are like
I
a
love
kid
it.
at Christmas when that comes up.
I am.
I hate it.
I am. I know.
All
Now,
right.
Listen, folks, we can't thank you guys enough for listening. We got an awesome review on
that
Apple
was one of the
Podcasts.
best reviews we've ever
we
gotten. Seriously.
Listen, we always ask you, and we're going to ask you again because giving a review on whatever podcast platform that you listen to us on really does help more people find it. You know, every podcast asks for you to, hey, subscribe, tell a friend. It's because it helps more people find it. There are other people that might want to listen to this shit that we do, and that helps it.
And the more we grow, it gives us opportunities to get other guests.
right, we've got some pretty.
We got,
Yeah.
Ace does an amazing job booking the show, reaching out to some great guests. But the more that we grow the show, the more opportunities we're going to have for even more guests. So,
Right.
That's how you help us continue to grow the show and continue to give you guys the best possible show that we can.
Yeah. So please tell a friend, give us a 5-star written review. That review that we got was fantastic. We get a lot of reviews, but this one you could tell they put
Oh
a
my
lot
God.
of thought into what they were saying. And,
It wasn't just
we
these
really
guys are great.
appreciate
They
actually, I got to give a shout out to her. Keep talking.
Helen G.
Oh, Helen G. All right.
Helen
Thanks,
G.
Helen G.
I mean, it was so well written.
Yeah.
Described the show. Even mentioned that she's learned about bourbon from the podcast.
I know, that was
I mean,
cool.
so this person has listened to the shows. And seriously, heartfelt thank you for that. Review, Helen G.
Yeah.
Because that was a fantastic review, and it did help us. It gave us a bump this week.
Yeah.
So, if anybody listening, if you could do the same, greatly appreciate it.
And listen, while you're listening to us, we're not the only comedy podcast. Give some love to our buddies over at the Mixtape Podcast.
Love those guys. This is
we
one
talk
we
to
listen
them-
to regularly. We talk to them all the time.
Yeah.
Those guys put out a great show.
They just had their 100th episode.
Yeah.
Which I think this one or last week's might
Nope.
be our 300.
Jason Pollock was
300.
number 300 for us.
Wow. Oh, wow.
We have actually more
you
than
should
3.
edit this out, and after this is done, we should actually do a little intro for that one.
It's already
I'm
out.
sorry. Oh,
It's already
shit.
out. So
Okay,
nice
never
try,
mind.
Mr. Monday Morning Quarterback. But anyway, 300.
I'm too busy booking people.
And
okay?
300 doesn't even include the best ofs
Oh, wow. That's
That's
just
300 guests.
Wow.
in
I've
podcasts.
been
So
doing this a while, but
Yeah.
give us some love. Give the Mixtape Podcast some love, and again, tell a friend about us and keep listening. We've got some great. Next week we've got Jonathan Groff. I hate
not
to say
that
it.
one.
You know that's going to be the name of the episode.
It has to be.
Jonathan
It has-
Groff, not that one. But he is an amazing, amazing writer from Blackish to Happy Ending. He's actually on strike right now, so thank God we've got him. He's got some free time, but hopefully they resolve that strike, because what people don't realize
Are
is
you going to intro him tonight?
the actors. No, I'm going to give some props to the writers.
Just joking.
The actors do a great job, and all of the rest of the crew. But you know what? The writers are the ones that create the show,
Right.
and people don't realize that.
And writers were not getting paid properly
No.
for what streaming services do. And
No.
I understand why they're striking. Everyone else is
Absolutely.
making money but them.
But them.
And it's their words that you're hearing when the actors
And
talk.
some of them are writing while on set, like they're punching up the
Yeah.
script while
So,
the actors are on set.
You know, it should be a situation where everybody benefits
Equal pay.
or everybody doesn't type of thing. not
Exactly.
just a few. So I understand why they're out there doing this.
Yeah.
So good luck to all of them.
So we've got him coming up. We got another New York guy coming up in a few weeks, and then my God, July is going to be amazing. So
It's just
it's-
we're shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
That's all. So stay tuned.
and we're planning Scottober.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so listen, thanks folks for listening. We really appreciate it. And other than that, we will talk to you
Next week.